Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is sponsored by PFC Kirk. And if you don't know who that is, his name is Maurice, aka Mo Money. And I'll put a link to his channel down below. So he's been a friend of the channel for quite some time now, and he made a very generous channel donation of $50 via PayPal. And I can't tell you how much that means to me, and I can't tell you how much money that is to me, because my YouTube channel is not monetized and I am not an Amazon associate, so I make $0 making these terrible videos. So I have this policy that whenever I get a channel donation, I spend 100% of the funds doing a giveaway. So I've decided to share what I've learned over the years using these OBD2 scan tools, and I've purchased 2 of them, and I'll be giving those away at the end of the video. Excuse me. So what I recommend you do is just skip to the very end of this video to the chapter called giveaway, and there'll be the rules on how to enter the giveaway to win these 2 scan tools. And I recommend you don't watch any of this video because it's about to get real boring real quick. So I'm going to gear this video to somebody who has never heard of OBD2. So I'm going to give you a very brief and oversimplified explanation of this, just to keep it as short as possible. So OBD2 stands for Onboard Diagnostic Systems Generation 2. And I really can't talk about it unless I touch on OBD1 and OBD3 just real quick. So when you think of OBD2, just think of the check engine light, and what these tools do is they're like a window into the check engine light to let you know what's going on. So OBD1, I'm fortunate enough, and I've had the pleasure and displeasure of growing up working on cars that came with OBD1. And this started out in the early 80s, and the pros of the OBD1 was it was a step in the right direction towards computer controls and emission system monitoring. And I've got 5 cons in my opinion that were the somewhat failures of this system. So the number 1 con is there was no industry standard for the Diagnostic Link Connector. And what that is that's the little connector plug that you plug into your car. So with OBD1, there was almost a different connector for every brand or every manufacturer of car. So a Ford, GM, Chevy, Honda, Toyota, they all had different connectors. And it was very not user-friendly. So the second con or failure was there was no industry standard for the trouble codes. So if you pulled trouble code 24 on a Honda, that could mean one thing, and if you pulled code 24 on a different brand of car, it could mean something completely different. So that further complicated things. And the third con or failure is there was no industry standard for scan tools, and you almost needed a different scan tool for every manufacturer of car. And that made it really difficult on DIY, independent shops, and just the average consumer that wanted to work on their own cars. And the fourth con is the trouble codes erased themselves when the ignition was turned off. And what that means is you'd be driving and then the check engine light would come on, and as soon as you turn the key off, the code would be erased. So when you took it down to the mechanic, he's going to say, you know, there's no problem, there's nothing I can do. And the last thing, con I've got on here is there's no bi-directional communication. And what that means is the communication was only one way. It could only pull information from the computer, and it could not accept any commands. So the reason why I'm telling you those things is because OBD2 fixed all of those problems. It standardized the Diagnostic Link Connector So every OBD2 car uses the same plug, so we only need one plug. And it standardized the trouble code definitions, so they're all the same from car to car in the generic series. And it standardized the scan tool, so you only need one scan tool to work on every manufacturer make of vehicle, and that's a biggie. And number 4, when you get a check engine light, the memory keeps it in the computer when you shut the engine off. So after you shut the engine off and you go to the next ignition key cycle, the code is still in the car, so the mechanic or you can pull the code. And of course, OBD2 has bi-directional communication, so we can use these tools to send commands to certain actuators in the vehicle to get them to test themselves for diagnostic purposes. So, just real quick, this is I can't go any further without mentioning this scan tool, and this is like the granddaddy. This is what I grew up using. This is the Snap-on MT2500, and it comes with this main unit right here, and it came with a multitude of different cartridges, a multitude of different cable connectors, and a multitude of different keys that went inside the cable connector, and even some power plugs, because OBD1 was not self-powered. So just maintaining this scan tool alone was a nightmare, and the cost. These things were $5,000, and every few years you had to purchase new software to keep it running. So fast forwarding 25 years or so, these little guys for $25 are really amazing, in my opinion. They do so much for so little cost. So now I want to go over some OBD2 glossary terms. So we've already mentioned the DLC. That stands for Diagnostic Link Connector. And then the next one I want to show you is the MIL, M-I-L. And that stands for Malfunction Indicator Lamp, or the check engine light, or the service engine soon light. And when the MIL comes on, it usually means emission levels may have risen 1.5 times normal, and it's stored a code. And if the MIL is flashing, it may mean imminent catalyst meltdown. And just to give you an example, if it's flashing and you're driving on the freeway, it could mean that you have a misfire and it's loading the catalytic converter with unburned fuel, and it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter until it melts down and causes a fire. So if your MIL is ever flashing, you want to pull over and shut the engine off. And DTC, of course, is diagnostic trouble code. And then this one is important. This is called freeze frame data. And just think of this as a snapshot of sensor data when the trouble code is set. And so what that means is it will take a snapshot of all the sensor values. So for instance, if the engine was cold, when you just started the engine, when the code was set, you could see that the engine coolant temperature was 70 degrees, and that would let you know that the problem occurred when the engine was cold. And vice versa, it would let you know if the problem occurred when the engine was hot at normal operating temperature. So this next one is called live data, and that just means you can look at live real-time sensor values with the engine running to see if they're in operating parameters. Now this next one is a biggie too. This is called readiness monitors, and these are individual system self-tests that the car does just to make sure everything is working properly. And on our cars, we've got just a few. We've got the catalyst that monitors the catalytic converter, the oxygen sensor heater, the EGR valve, the exhaust gas recirculation, the evap, the fuel evaporative system, or if you're old, just think of the charcoal canister. And the next term is drive cycle, and this is a specific sequence of startup, warm-up, and driving tasks that enables the readiness monitors so it can do its self-tests. So, how can I use this? How can I use an OBD2 scan tool if I don't do my own repairs? So say if your state is doing emission inspections, and I printed this map off Wikipedia, and it's probably not up to date, but basically the states in yellow are doing emission inspections, the states in blue are doing safety inspections, and the states in blue and yellow are doing both. And these other states that are gray are not doing any inspections at all. So I imagine it's only a matter of time between these gray states start turning yellow or blue and yellow. So every year or once every 2 years, when you got to take your car in for an emission inspection, one of the things they do is they check to see if you have any codes, and they check to see if your readiness monitors have run to completion. And in my state, we have to pay for the smog inspections. So if you fail your smog inspection, it means you have to come back and get it retested, and you've got to pay again. So if you've got a scan tool, what you can do is you can check for codes and check to make sure your monitors have run to completion, so that if you do fail, it's not going to be for one of those two things, and it'll be for something else. And it can increase your chances of passing your emission test. And the second reason why you might want a scan tool if you don't do your own repairs, and that's to keep your mechanic honest. By pulling the code, it can just give you at least some idea of where the problem is, so that when he comes back with the estimate or the phone call and he's talking about something completely different, you can say, well, hey, you know, I pulled the code before I took it in and it was this, so I really don't see where you're coming from. Okay, so how can I use this tool if I am into DIY or I do want to fix my own car? So I've come up with a scenario here on how this would work. So basically, without a check engine light, and there's a problem in the car, I've got this analogy, and I want you to imagine yourself in a cave, and you've got to get out of the cave, and there's about 100 different corridors out of the cave, and only one is going to lead you outside the cave. So without pulling the code and starting a diagnosis, you're going to have to search all 100 caves in order to get out. Now, once you get the code, it narrows down the corridors to about 10. And then so it basically just cuts down or minimizes your diagnosis time in order to find out what the problem is, so you can make your corrective action or make your repairs. Now, what I just said is probably not going to make a lot of sense to people who have heard of these OBD2 scan tools. And if you ask the normal average person what the OBD2 scan tool does, is if you've got a check engine light, you plug it in, you get a code, and whatever the code says, that's what you replace. Well, that's really not how it works, but I can see why people would say that, because people do get lucky sometimes and just replace the first thing or the easiest thing first, and then sometimes that fixes the car. So what I've got here is I've got an example of something that you would not want to replace just based on looking at the code definition and not doing any diagnosis. So this code right here is called P0325 knock sensor 1 circuit bank 1. And if you don't know what a knock sensor is, I'll read this description. It says, the knock sensor detects vibrations upon increase and decrease in engine RPM. The knock sensor generates a voltage based on this vibration. The DT set This DT sets if the voltage goes outside the calibrated level. Possible causes: knock sensor circuit short to ground, knock sensor circuit short to voltage, knock sensor circuit open, damaged knock sensor. And it says all go to pinpoint test DG, and DG is for diagnosis. So if you didn't want to diagnose any of this and you just wanted to play shotgun roulette, you could just replace the knock sensor. How much is a knock sensor? You know, $30. Well, on our cars, replacing a knock sensor is not an easy task because it's located under the intake manifold, and my service literature calls for 4 hours of labor to replace it. So this is not a time when you would want to play parts shotgun and just replace it. You would want to diagnose it first. So I pulled the diagnostic steps 1 through 13. It was 4 pages, and I basically condensed it onto 1 page. So I'm not going to read this, but I'm just going to show it to you on screen, and you can pause it and then read it real quick. But basically what it says is there's 13 things that you have to check before you can condemn the sensor as bad and to replace it. And there are things like checking for open circuits, short circuits, shorts to voltages, and so forth. So after you complete each task, it's going to ask you a question, yes or no, did this happen? And that'll put you on to the next diagnosis step. So so for this code, there's 13 different things that you need to check before you can condemn the sensor and replace it. Now that right there should tell you why my local Ford dealer charges $225 an hour for check engine light diagnosis, because they don't know what exactly is wrong until they complete all 13 of these tests and checks. Okay, so now let's get over to the car and I'll show you how these things work. Let me turn on this battery charger so we get some power. Okay, so I've got 2 scan tools here. This one here is like a handheld unit. It's self-contained, there's no batteries, you just plug it in and turns it on. And the second one here is called a Wi-Fi adapter, and this one broadcasts all the information to any mobile device, whether it be a smartphone or a tablet. And you just download a free app, and that's how you get it to work. So you'll plug it into your DLC down here under the dash, and then you'll turn the car on, and this thing will power up. And it's very simple to use. There's only 4 buttons on this unit, and we'll go to diagnose here, and maybe you can see that. Okay, so with this, this is your basic menus. You can read codes, erase codes, readiness monitors, you know, all that stuff I was talking about on the table. So not much to it. Now let me show you how this works. This is the Wi-Fi version. This just plugs in, and then you come over to your phone, and you'll need to turn on your Wi-Fi and just connect like any other device. There it is. And these are my two favorite apps. I'll put links to these apps down below. And it's going to initialize. Okay, so here we go. We're connected. It says my intake air temperature is 55 degrees. My engine coolant temperature is 55 degrees. And you can do the same things. You can look at your readiness monitors, your trouble codes, whatever you want to do. And the reason why I like these devices, or the wireless device, is because sometimes when I'm driving and I need to diagnose a problem, I just stick the phone on the dash and I can watch my sensor values right then and there. So it's a little bit more convenient. Okay, so that's how that works. And now let's go to the giveaway. So the rules for the giveaway is you must own a Crown Vic, a Grand Marquis, a Town Car, or a Marauder. You must leave a comment, and you must email me 3 photos of your Panther car within 12 hours of being notified of you being the winner. And I'll post the winner drawing video 24 hours after this video. And I'll also choose 9 alternate winners just in case that first person doesn't get a hold of me or wants to pass it on. And I'll be including the ELM 325 Wi-Fi scan tool, the Think OBD2 scan tool, and I'll even be including the cell phone to work with the Wi-Fi one. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.